So, Highguard. And just in time, too, considering, if you watch this video, it'll either be the day that Season 2 comes out or Season 2 has already been out. So, whenever you're watching this, welcome. I'm going to be doing my review finally because I wanted to wait because I just wanted to see how the first season of Highguard would go, and I've also been busy. So, let's continue. Saying that Highguard is controversial is like saying that fire is hot. This game has been in the pits, it has been scrutinized, it has been talked about so much over the past month it's been out almost now, and I have a few opinions about it, so let's get into the details. I think Highguard is a weird game because part of me sees the obvious, very apparent flaws with its design and how it was optimized and how terrible, the reveal was, but I also see a lot of positives about this game that I do think are well worth their comeuppance. They're well worth talking about. They're well worth, applauding even for some of the cool things that the game does. But before we get into all that, I need to discuss the cons of this game because obviously you can't just be a corporate shield. You need to think for yourself, and I do have a few critiques to say the least about this game. So number one, I think by far the one thing that absolutely turned me off about this game when I first played it, when I first booted it up, even though it was free and it was an indie game, man, this game was unoptimized to shit. This game ran like butt. No matter what platform you played on, apparently, too. I didn't experience it on PC, but I heard it was worse on PC. I played it on PlayStation 5, and it was not the best optimized game, to say the least. It was definitely buggy. I had a few crashes. I saw some clips on Twitter. It was bad. By far, my biggest opinion, my biggest critique was the optimization was trash. The game was clearly not ready. It was not fully cooked, and they still pushed it out, which I'm shocked by, but they still did it anyways. My second complaint would be that some of the character designs, especially John Highguard himself, the one that's been memed all the hell, yeah, he's pretty basic, I'm not gonna lie. He's pretty boring. And then the other chick, Scarlet, the knife-throwing dagger lady with the cloak and the sand powers and going invisible, no, she's not really cool. I don't think she's the best-looking character either. They're very bland. They're very Concord-esque. I don't think as bad as Concord, but they are pretty bad, to say the least. Third of all, I think that the way that the game is set up, the main mode, the raid mode, I think there are some parts of the match that tend to linger a little bit longer than they should. And considering they want this to be the main attraction of the game, they want this to be like the team, they want this to be like, the siege mode, they want it to be like Battle Royale, they want it to be like the main mode, the thing that people really care about when they want to play some Highguard. I think it's a cool idea and concept, but it needs a lot of reworking before this can actually work out to be good, because you take a standard match of Highguard and you get to the looting phase, it drags on. I mean, it goes on forever. I don't mind it personally, but I can see the critiques that a lot of people are saying that the looting phase during the first half of the match goes on for way too long before the Stormbreaker itself forms and the actual match begins. And there's a lot of dead space in these maps that have been designed, and they are well-designed maps, but there's so much dead space where nothing is happening at all, especially when you're playing 3v3. And I'm going to get to the 5v5 mode later in the positives. I think 3v3 just does not work for this game. The maps are way too big. I think that the looting phase takes way too long. I feel like getting your gear and getting the best weapons possible for whatever phase of the match that you're in takes a little bit longer than it should. I think the weapon upgrade system could be a little bit more simplified instead of it being so overly complicated and taking forever to get like a legendary weapon or a purple weapon even. And also I think when a good match of Highguard does happen, it goes on for a while. I've had matches literally last up to half an hour. In any other game, I probably wouldn't complain about it, but in such a fast-paced shooter like Highguard, 30 minutes feels like forever of you just doing the same thing back and forth over and over again. It's fun, but it does get tiring, I would argue. But negatives aside, I think that's about all I have, is that the game is poorly optimized. It was clearly not finished. It wasn't polished when it first came out. They have been patching it over time, which is why I waited to do this review, because a lot of the things that I have been talking about are not really a problem, especially my number one issue with the poor optimization. A lot of that has been fixed over time. which is why I'm still mostly positive about this game. I'm not fully on board with it, but I like it, to say the least. I have been playing it a lot on stream. If you do check out my twitch.tv/Mr. Tickles, and my streams on YouTube, I have been thoroughly enjoying this game and playing it for, a decent amount of time. I think the core issues with this game can be healed. They can be fixed. I don't think this game has any major overhaul issues like Concord. So with all that being said, though, let's get into the positives. By far, my favorite part about this game, and of course, you guys know me, I'm very biased towards Respawn. I'm very biased towards Titanfall and Apex. They're some of my favorite shooters of all time. These guys get it. These guys understand weapons. They understand gameplay. They understand quick movement. I think by far the biggest praise I can give Highguard is that Highguard has some of the most quickest, snappiest, just feel-good movement that you can find in a AAA, well, not really AAA, but shooters in general nowadays. Or for example, the way that your character feels, to be able to just snap from one movement to another, the actions, mantling over objects, sliding around corners, popping somebody with a shotgun, and the guns themselves too. The guns feel great. They feel meaty, they feel heavy, they feel cracked. You can hear the bullets bah, 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 really popping off. You can actually feel the weight behind the gun that you're shooting. I like that. That's nice. The way they described it in the developer interview was that they wanted ballistic weapons, and you can really feel the power behind the weapons that you use in the game. So by far, the actual gameplay itself, the playing of the video game, pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty fun. And I've told many acquaintances and friends of mine that if you ignore all the bullshit that the internet has been talking about for the past couple of weeks now, if you get down to brass tacks and just play the game itself, the gunplay, the movement, the game feels good. It feels great. It feels just like Apex, which is kind of funny. It's like Whiplash, but in a good way. It's like a whole new game, but it feels familiar at the same time. And I like that aspect because as a guy who has over 3,000 hours in Apex, man, I'm telling you, I'm sick of it. I still get on and play, but man, it feels so great to have something new. I think another important aspect about Highguard that does work is a majority of the characters, because if you really enjoy a game like Apex, or you enjoy a game like Titanfall, or maybe even Valorant, almost, it's not very ability based. For people who have been playing Rivals and Overwatch for the past 2.5 years, maybe ever since Rivals came out, you notice that those games have very ability heavy situations where you just get killed, you get insta-ulted by an ability, and then your whole match gets done. A lot of people, especially people like me, I hate being killed by abilities in most games like this, and I get it, it's a hero shooter, but I would rather die from gunplay than die from a person just pressing F or just pressing triangle or whatever, and then just doing an ultimate ability and just absolutely wiping you, or sometimes even wiping your entire team. That's kind of deflating. That's kind of boring, in my opinion. So to have a game that comes out that's similar to Apex, where the abilities matter, but they don't matter as much as long as you have good gameplay, as long as you have good understanding of the basic mechanics, you can succeed in the game, and I enjoy that. So the characters themselves, I mainly main, what's her name? Mara. I mainly use Mara because she's like the only support character in the game right now, and her abilities are very simple. She just, boom, throws a soul orb down, you get some soul armor, you sacrifice some souls, you drag them down the purple hell, and you do your thing. Very simple, very easy to understand. I think some of the characters do work. I think Yuna works. I think Mara works. I think John Highguard sucks. I think Scarlett's abilities are pretty cool, but I think Scarlett herself is kind of boring. I think Slade is cool, but his abilities are also kind of useless. Redmayne's pretty cool. I actually like Redmayne. He's pretty cool. He's the one that they showed off during the tutorial, and I think he works for what he is. The Traitor character, he's great. Overall, I like the characterization of some of the characters. There's only a handful of them that are just kind of like basic and bland. But by far, I think the biggest problem with this game is that it has been trashed by so many big creators that it gets a lot of hate that it doesn't deserve. This is not a bad game, but it's also not a great game. It's just an okay game. It's a mediocre game. It's okay. It's good. Do I think it has potential? Yes, of course. I actually do. I think this game has a lot of potential to be great. I don't think it's as bad as people are saying, but it's got a long way to go before it really reaches the heights of its competition. I would definitely say it's definitely not as polished as Apex was when it first came out. It's not as polished as Overwatch. It doesn't have the content of Rivals or the polish of Rivals. You know, it's got a lot of competition. You know, it had the polish or the content of Valorant, and these are of course these games are different from a gameplay standpoint, but they are aesthetically similar with its hero shooter elements. And we all know that hero shooters are a very bloated genre right now in the space of video games. There's a lot of hero shooters, and a lot of them don't work out, like Concord, but to see a game like this come out from some industry veterans that really do understand good mechanics, they understand good gameplay, they do understand inherently like how to make a game fun. I think from a gameplay standpoint, this game is very fun. Sometimes the shooting can feel a little cheap. Sometimes, like when you hit somebody, the latency when a bullet hits a target, even if they come behind a wall, sometimes you do get like the hit registers and you'll die when you're behind a wall. So sometimes there's a little bit of weird stuff like that. But overall, I think this game has potential, and I want to see what it becomes in the future, and I'm definitely going to be keeping it on my radar. And I suggest you, dear viewer, to also try out this game and give it some support, because this is a well-made game from an indie studio that is made up of a lot of industry veterans that are putting in a whole hell of a lot of work within the past couple of weeks to make sure this game is up to the standards of their fan base. And to that, I respect the company, and I respect them for the developers for doing that, because most other companies like Sony, for example, when they dropped the Concord, they just completely just threw that motherfucker off the face of the earth. I'm glad to see the developers are really committed to making this game great, and I can't wait to see what the future is. But I think overall, yeah, that's about it. So, see ya.